what is the product that we get with college? And so I've been asking myself this question. And so there was another guy, watched a video of him, and it's good to see other people feel the same way, similar to how I do. And I've been asking myself this question because of the fact when I went to college, we are always pitched that we're going to get a job from college, and that just doesn't turn out to be true. And now the thing with me is the volleyball coach was the one who was pushing loans. I was lucky to get the Pell Grant, and she was pushing, I believe it was the Stafford loan. It was some type of college loan of some sort. And the thing that always ran through my brain was, now, how will I pay it back? How will I pay this loan back? Because I wasn't positive that I would actually get a job making as much money as what they were saying. Because I think that I could have gotten up to $20,000 for the college loan. And I asked her, I said, well, why should I take the college loan? And she says, or why should I take the student loan? And she says, oh, well, most people just live off of the student loan while they're going to college because they can't find a job that actually fits in with them going to college. This is what she told me. And so I think that what I just said there is important because with college being a scam, what is the product? Is your product a loan? Is your product a loan and a debt? Because either the parents have to pay it back or the students have to pay it back. And now the thing that was being told to me at that time was that, well, you're supposed to be able to go out and get a job that's going to pay back your student debt when you go to college. That's what they were saying. You're supposed to be able to go out and get a job. So this is the thing that they were telling me because I had asked my parents about it. And so they were all told the same thing up there in that area. The only place they could be getting it was from TV and from the institutions themselves. My dad worked at the hospital, and so they had a lot of nurses that were going to the college. And I asked my dad, but my mom had actually told me, she says, well, why don't you ask your dad about some of these things? Because he's going to be more familiar with it because he's working right there at the college, and the college actually sends a lot of their nursing students to the college. Or the hospital actually sends a lot of the nursing students to the college to do things. And so I asked him about it, and my dad had told me related to college. He says, well, they do a survey based off of the future of where they think that jobs are going to go next, with where they allocate money to send people to college. And and so I'm asking the question, what is the what is the product we get out of college? Now, the guy I just watched, he actually gave a statistic where he said that 59% of the people who attend college actually finish college. So there's a 40% dropout rate, is my understanding with college. And then he said only 20% of the people who attend college actually get a job. So that would lead me, and or was it he worded it? He said only 20%. He said there's a high percentage of jobs that you can go and get and that didn't require a college degree. And so he's saying the same thing that I have said, that I said this like over 10 years ago. I said, this is stuff, what I went to college for is things that I can learn in a YouTube video. And so, why is it necessary for us to actually even go to college if it's things that we can learn in a YouTube video? Now some of it is what I call fun stuff, related to arts and crafts and things like that. I mean, that's always been affiliated with colleges, which is you have someone who knows how to do a skill, and then they teach at the college. I'm not sure how they get paid. I never knew that part, but they teach at night. So they're teaching and then they get paid that way. So I don't know if it's like what they do at the crafting stores or what. But but I know that where I went to college, or where I grew up at, they had adult. They called it adult education, and it was nighttime. But it was things that you wouldn't actually get in the regular class because It's not things that would be suitable, but it is in some colleges that is fine arts. A lot of it is in the higher, more expensive colleges of the fine arts institutions, such as crochet and painting and the arts like that. That's so it's in the higher skilled category, the higher price category, but at the same time it's not something you can actually make a living doing out in the real world. So let me ask this, what is the point of attending college? Because the thing is when I learned to crochet, it was actually a skill that was passed to me from my family members, from a lot of my family members. My mom had a hand at teaching me how to crochet, and then I learned from several other people. I had a cousin that actually was doing some crochet before my mom actually taught me, and there was some things I kind of dinked around with, but I never actually even called it that at the time. And then I learned from my grandma, and then my mother-in-law, and a whole bunch of different people had a hand at me picking up skills here and there from people. I learned about reverse engineering. There was a woman who handed me a swatch when I was a military spouse, and I lived in Germany, and I pulled it apart, and I already knew the basic crochet stitches, and so then I knew how to put it back together. And so I thought, well, I don't want to pull the whole thing apart, and so I just took the pattern from her stitch. And so I'm asking the question, what is the product with college? What is the product with college? Is that a loan? A loan and interest on the loan is your product from college? Not only that, you're using a loan to pay the teachers' salaries. Think about that. The teachers get paid. You're the one who takes out a loan. You borrow money, take out a loan to attend college. You pay the teachers' salaries, and you're stuck with the debt. Isn't that a scam? And then you don't get a job. Isn't that a scam? I would like someone, please rationalize this for me. I feel like I need to yell, to be passionate about this. That's where I was going. We're talking about the scam in college, because a lot of things that people learn is through learning from someone else. And so colleges have created a scam where students, okay, we have inflation. We have inflation. Now, the teachers actually get paid from the student loan debt that the student takes out. Hello, the M boy. And so the students take out a loan. The students or the parents take out a loan. They go into debt to send little Susie to college. And the teachers get paid. And little Susie decides about maybe 2/3 the way through that she doesn't want to go to college anymore. The parents still have to pay back the debt. Little Susie doesn't have a job, and the teachers got paid. So what's the product you get? You're getting a product of debt by going to college. I don't see it any other way. Now, myself, now when I was young, my parents had actually, my mom told me that she said my grades weren't good enough for them to pay for me to go to college, I was ready to be done with high school as it was. I hated school so much because the teacher, I got punished. I got punished for bad grades. That's why I hated school, because I got punished by my parents when I had bad grades, and then I got yelled at all the time. Well, you could do better with your grades. That's all I ever heard. You could do better with your grades. And so it always had me thinking, like, when I was done with school, I was ready to be done. I I didn't know what life was going to be about. I didn't have any preparation for what I was supposed to do in life. I didn't know that high school was supposed to be a preparation zone to send you to college or for life. I had no idea that's what was supposed to happen. But now when I think back on it, yeah, we did have home economics, which was, typical. mostly girls in class. We did have a few boys. I was surprised. Cooking class was popular with the boys. Cooking class kind of was popular. There was about 5 or 6 boys that were in our cooking class. And so the teacher stuck them all together with other boys, which I was kind of surprised about that. But they were fun. They were actually a lot of fun. When they made things a mess. When they made cakes, they made it. Their cake was edible. I actually asked them if I could have a taste of their cake, and they made a cake. It was just a huge mess when they put frosting on it, and they made it all sloppy and everything. I don't know. I always hoped that they got an A for their cake because I thought they completed it, and the teacher didn't say it had to look like a professional cake. And then here I was trying to make our cake look all professional and everything, which I don't know if I got any extra points for that or not, but I was trying to make it look professional. We were trying to make it look like it was something that was you would buy from a cake store, and but that was the gender neutral rules. But now with high school, it's a free education. Jacob Stefan. Hello, Jacob Stefan. Stephen or Stephen, Jacob Stephen. Why is what? Why is? Do you have a question, Jacob? Do you have a question? And so that's why I raised the issue of it being a scam. What is the product? And I liked how they were talking about Harvard, and and the one kid apparently had a Harvard education, and he was offended by the other guy they were both interrogating each other and interrupting each other. I don't know why set up by just said set up by just said. I don't know what that says either. There's like a D of some sort and then some asterisks by it. Um, and so we're talking about the scam of college. And so it's job creation for college teachers. You go into debt. The parents go into debt. The students go into debt. And what is the product out of it? Because we're not guaranteed jobs. We are not guaranteed jobs after going to college. And that's the thing for me that was frustrating because, that's what I was being told. So we were even hearing it on, you hear that in the recruiting messages too. And it's the identical same thing as the military. Because when I was a military spouse, I was listening to the soldiers. They talked about the correspondence courses all the time. And what they said was they could get college from their GI Bill and do the correspondence courses, which a lot of them would do the correspondence because they couldn't actually attend physical college, even though they were learning skills while they were in the military. And so, but then they said when they got called to duty, which that's where the game Call of Duty comes from, called to duty, which means they might go on a 4-week tour of duty, temporary duty assignment, or they could be gone for 6 months. Then they have to relinquish them going to college, but the teacher still gets paid. It's the same, it's the same identical thing, but in the civilian sector, it's even worse because of the fact that people have to carry the student debt, and so the teachers got paid. So the parents are the medium. So now we have inflation, and then we have the loans compounding. The interest is compounding on the student loans. And so what is the benefit? How is college not a scam? Because I don't know who is benefiting from it. The college teachers are benefiting from it because they are getting their great big salaries. Some of them I've heard get 6 figures a year. Some of the doctors of the colleges, they call themselves doctors, but they're like the board of director doctors and stuff. So if you're in there as a board of director of something or another, you're going to sound like you're really important, so, but see, the thing with the colleges are the teachers continue going to school. They're learning stuff as they're teaching their college classes. Plus, they get free education, it sounds like, while they're teaching in college. So like someone like me, I can't ever compete with that because I only had a 2-year college degree. Mine amounted to just about nothing. Um, other than the fact that I can say I have a college degree, but I was never able to go on to get a big fancy college degree so I could be an attorney or make something of myself or be a teacher and make something of myself. Um, you know, well, actually, I continued getting the Pell Grant though after I graduated. It was at a 2-year community college. That's where I got my college degree, was community college. And I loved it though. I liked going there. It was when I started working there, I started seeing the competition though within the college itself. And it was a lot of women. There was a lot of women who were working in the college. Now, my teachers, most of them were women. I don't think I even had a man at all for a teacher. Or no, there was one guy. There was one man. My psychology teacher was a man, but the rest of them were women. So men were, there was men who were teachers, but there was just not as many. And so once I graduated, I was thinking, well, gosh, I'd like to work at the college. And so one of the teachers had said something about one of the students. Now, he was a guest who came and taught our class, and they said he was going to start teaching in the business department. They introduced him, and they said that he used to be in the military, and so he didn't have a 4-year degree. He graduated from the college where I graduated, and he graduated from networking, and he got a preference up into being a college teacher in that college. Now, for me to go to get a degree there, I would have had to have a 4-year degree. But this guy, he got his 2-year degree and he started teaching. And he was former military. Now, think about that. I'm not sure how they pulled that off. But somehow they're able to pull that off to get military into jobs. But the truth is, I always said, and it was not long after I graduated, I learned that truth was, when YouTube rolled around in 2005, then just like this guy on the video said, well, why can't those of us, if we want Harvard degrees, all we got to do is watch YouTube videos. And he's absolutely right. If it wasn't for the Pell Grant and FAFSA to help pay for college, I would have never went. Me too, Bad Wolf. Absolutely, you're absolutely right. If I would have never went to college, I would have never got to go if it wasn't for FAFSA and the Pell Grant. And, I've actually thought I would like to attend college. I liked going to sit in the classroom college. I didn't want to be doing college on the internet. I liked being around people. Now, right now, my gosh, I would feel like an old geezer. If I was doing college, I'd want to be around at least a college that had maybe a third of the people who are maybe close in my age or people who are over the age of 40. I can identify with people over 40 at least because they act like they have half a brain and they're mature, but the ones who are really, really young, a lot of times act like they don't have half a brain. They're still in kindergarten. Only downside was you had to finish, otherwise I would have had to pay it all back. So that was a good motivation to finish. Oh, well, I would not have had to pay anything back. Mine was all free. I don't think I would have had to pay. I don't know if I would have had to pay anything back or not. I didn't. If that was in part of it, the grant, I didn't see that. But I never planned on not finishing, And see, what I did in my college, we had a very high dropout rate. Our dropout rate was so high. We started out, I think, Okay, mine I think was kind of a test marketing area, a test area with the college degree. Um, so I think we started out with probably 25 people that were in our class, and they were of all ranges. There was a guy way older than me. He was 65, and once he graduated, he wrote in the local newspaper. He asked how come the college was actually teaching college degrees that people will never get a real job for. Um, but by the time I graduated, we had maybe a total of, I would say, 10 people at the most. So 15, I would say 15 of them dropped out. 15 of them dropped out. Now, one girl, she was in soccer and she transferred to another college. So I can't necessarily say that she I don't know what happened to her if she finished, but she didn't. They said the area that what we were doing was really, really hard. And there is a high learning curve. There can be a high learning curve to it, related to consistency and it being something that you like doing. And that's what I always have said. The same thing with like learning a skill. Like if you want to learn crochet, it's the same thing. It's a very small niche. And I would say with marketing and breaking it down into multimedia marketing and the it's not the film industry anymore, it's the digital age. It's the AI artificial intelligence age. And I've been here the whole time. And you know what? The first time I ever met Google, and I say that with Google because of the fact I was in college the first time I met Google. I was in college and there was this kid. I think it was into our second year in the summer when I was doing an internship. And he actually pulled it up on our screen. We were doing an internship. We were teaching ourselves out of the book because the teachers did not know the curriculum. We opened the book, we read through the book to teach ourselves. A lot of the stuff, some of it I kind of knew how to do it before. So I also saw career students that were anywhere between 30 to 60 years old that used those grants to sort of get paid. Um, I've never heard of grants where the leftover money was by the time everything was spent for me, I had no leftover money. It was all on books. The books were expensive. They were like $500 each quarter. And so I got paid twice a year. Plus I did got the work study. Work study was only $500, and so I would go into the library. I was supposed to be able to sit in there and study, but the woman had me doing her work. They had me shredding paper. So they literally had me doing work. I was supposed to be able to go in there and like not do, I don't know. I always would ask her, I said, do you have anything that you need done? And so she literally had me doing her work, so I would do work in there until I met the requirement for the $500 work study. And, sometimes it was shredding paper. And so, but she was getting her full salary in the multimedia room. That's where she was, at the multimedia room. So she was sort of like a librarian, but she was inside of the multimedia room. And so she had the master control over all the computers. And so if you needed to take a test or something like that for speed typing and stuff like that, go ahead, Bad Wolf. I'm listening to you, because I find what you have to say interesting. Um, yeah, I never, if I never thought about that. Actually, I finished, even, I went 1 year extra. I went 3 years to college, actually. But I wasn't, the third year I was taking courses. So I took some psychology courses because I kind of found psychology fun. I was taking some economic courses, and economics was really hard because like macroeconomics and microeconomics. But if you lived nearby, you didn't need to use the transportation and housing money, but they gave it to you anyway. Yeah, well, transportation and housing. Oh, well, that's interesting. So that was part of your grant? Because I know, well, okay, this is what I can share with you. I went to college with a soldier. He took my course and we finished, we graduated together. He was in the I don't know if he was in the National Guard still, but he said he used to be in the military. And so he said he had a $50,000 GI Bill at the time. This was back in the year 2001. And so he said he was working part-time. He was living with a woman because he said he had a really bad relationship and he just was not sure about getting married again, but he said he was just living with her and her kids and they were, she was helping him out. And so he said he had the $50,000 GI Bill. So he was able to use that and the Pell Grant. Plus, he had money coming in from being in the military. So he was able to do okay with how he was doing it. And so he was living off of his GI Bill. So that's how people got sort of paid. Yes, absolutely. That's how they got paid, was through the GI Bill. So they would, while they're going, that's why they kept going to college, I think, and I don't object to that, but see, with the military, it's set up so they can actually kind of, I mean, the thing is, it's like the area where I lived up in the Midwest and even where I'm at now. That's why I'm saying when people tell me to go here, go here, go here, it's like it's like I want to shake some sense into them because it's like, okay, I have lived there and I've lived here and I've lived there and I know what it was like. I know we have inflation. I didn't fall off the fucking turnip truck. I have some experience in life and you're treating me like I'm a child. Okay, granted, we're all adults here, but you guys could listen to the older people who have a little bit more experience. And we're crying out, for crying out loud, we are saying, you're making us homeless. This society is making us homeless. Um, so, yes, that's how they get paid. Do you want to hear more? I'll tell you more. My son, he actually used his GI Bill to get his CDL for driving a truck. And so he was saying he didn't have the money. He was saying it was going to cost him $10,000 to he would have to come up with a whole bunch of money to go to truck driving school to get his CDL. So he used his GI Bill to go um, to truck driving school. So he actually has a job now, but he had already been in the military. He knew how to drive a truck anyway. So basically, he couldn't transfer his skills from the military to a truck driving school. He had to do now the thing is I'm thinking about is that yeah, it probably does make sense to me that he would want to learn things because it's not going to be identical to the military. So it does make sense to me that he would want to go to truck driving school and learn some things, even though it's going to be similar. There's going to be a lot of similarities. And so, yeah, so with any school, you can take your GI Bill money. You guys can do it. I can't. I was never in the military, so I can't pull it off. But the military can. And there's also perks for the military related to job placement where the military gets they get a favoritism. What is it called? A preference. It's called a military preference into a lot of jobs. And so that's why you see Pete Hegseth with Fox News. And so he's getting paid. He's one of the few. He got lucky. He's getting paid really good. He got lucky. He got into Fox News. And then you see Trey Gowdy. He's got his own show. So he got lucky. He got out of being a politician, so he's a millionaire, and then he goes into a TV show where he gets paid really well. We don't have that luxury with YouTube. We just don't. We have inflation. And so these politicians aren't actually helping us. Chip Roy, he's been hollering loud. Chip Roy, he's hollering down in Texas, he's hollering loud about inflation and problems in our society. Bernie Sanders has been hollering loud about it. Elizabeth Warren has been hollering loud about it. I don't know if Chip Roy, what party he's in. I don't hear any from the R side hollering loud about inflation. And so it's like they're a bunch of cowards running with their tails between their legs. So I'm just calling it like it is, how I see it. So, but historically in the past, what they always said is that the Republicans are warheads and they want to go to war. This is what my first husband said. He was in the military. He said Republicans want to go to war, Democrats want to negotiate everything, and they want to do peacekeeping and stuff like that. But Democrats are, spending a lot of money now. But how is that possible? Republicans are spending a lot of money too when they send people to war. It costs a lot of money to ship that equipment overseas into different places. And so let's recap here with Bad Wolf. Bad Wolf says, I'm from Indiana, and Ivy Tech was a cheap college. Those grants covered books, transportation, and housing. And Bad Wolf says, I also saw career students that were anywhere between the ages of 30 to 65 years old that used those grants to sort of get paid. Yeah, so the government employees have a different type of grant program. And so when we hear things, so when I hear things from people who say, "Oh, well, I got a grant and I got paid for this and this and this." So, yes, when I think back to college, my college days, there was this, I have an example of one student who was with me. He was in the military, and he told me not to tell anybody. Now, I'm not using his name. So all these decades have passed, and so he just told me not to tell anybody what was going on. Even though he told everybody in the classroom, he just said he didn't want anybody to really know about it. And so, I mean, he was really humble, very, very nice guy. And he wasn't hostile or anything like that. No, and so sometimes it almost felt like there was role players in my classroom, but I'm not positive. Now there was another girl in my class, and she had, ironically, I wish I could tell more of this, but I can't right now. I really wish I could tell more of it. I did on my other YouTube channel. But she had a boy. This is what I'll tell. She had a boyfriend that was at a military base. She was talking about how she was kind of scared that he was cheating on her, and he was in the military. And I looked at her and I told her, I said, she kept pulling up this picture showing me what he looked like, and I said, something. I said, they all cheat. I said, when I was a military spouse, I said, they're all cheating on their wives. And so she just kind of took a big sigh and went like, so it was kind of funny. Sometimes it almost felt like she was patient like me. I don't know if she ever found a job or not. I know I saw her walking around town a few times doing maybe some courier work or something like that. And I know I did some courier work for a bank, for an abstract company. And so I was always going from the abstract company over to the building where all the lawyers were at, and having to take things into their office and drop things off and then courier things back to the bank abstract office. Because interest was at 4% when Bush was in office. So every year the prices were going up with the housing. The interest rates dropped at that time, so people were refinancing. So the woman, and we're talking about housing now, but with student loan debt, they said you can't actually get that dismissed, that you have to pay it, that people have to pay that debt back. And so so even with a bankruptcy, you can't go bankrupt with a student loan debt. So so what is the product I agree with these people. What is the product? We need to start asking that about everything. What in the world is the product that we are getting for interest rates being higher? For bankers, for cryptocurrency, what's the product? What's the product with cryptocurrency that a person gets? I mean, because if there's not a way to get to cash out of it, what's the product? What's the product? What's the product with higher interest rates? What's the product? Interest rates with bankers. What is the product? You're passing, with higher rent. What's the product there by making rent higher? Because it doesn't do anything for any of us. What is the product with making a car more expensive, with making rent more expensive, with making housing more expensive, with making food more expensive? What's the product? I think there's a lot more things. There's a lot more smart people. I'm going to throw this out there. I hope they're listening. And I hope they ask the same question. What's the product with getting your hair cut more expensive? Let's ask it on the simpler. What is the product with making daycare expenses more expensive? What's the product with making diapers more expensive for babies? With making clothes more expensive? What's the product? Other than what's the product with tariffs? Other than making things more expensive for people inside of the United States. And then they're playing off of this notion of that, oh gosh, look, the house is $500,000, but we hear interest rates are dropping down. Now is a good time to spend $500,000 on 1,000 square foot house. Right now is the best time. I'm being facetious, so you guys don't think I'm actually really believing what I say. I'm being facetious here. Because a house is $500,000. You've got a job. You're lucky to have a job maybe making minimum wage at $7.25 an hour. And you got someone on TV now who's hollering about, now is a great time to go buy a house for $500,000. You're making $7.25 an hour, or you're retired and you're fixed income. You see how ridiculous the notion is? So, okay, I think that's about all I have to say right now. And thank you, Bad Wolf, for everything that you put in. Indiana, I'm from Indiana. Ivy Tech was a cheap college. Those grants covered books, transportation, and housing. I never got I just don't know how that worked. Because I've heard of people who have full scholarship, 100% covered scholarships, and typically that's for I don't know. Isn't that for sports players maybe? I don't know. But if you lived nearby and you didn't need to use the transportation and housing and money, they gave it to you anyway. Yeah. Well, it's your money to do with. So if they give you everything, I mean, there could be other things that you might need to use the money for, school supplies or, um, you know, I know with the Pell Grant, I never got anything extra. I never got money for books. The Pell Grant, it was my understanding the Pell Grant was for college, but there was enough money left over for books. And if there was any leftover money with the Pell Grant, it wasn't very much. So with the Pell Grant, they gave you enough money that matched what the community college was charging for college. And so then if there was anything, so okay, I'm going to use an example. I'm going to speculate or estimate, not speculate, but I'm going to estimate that in the year 2000, my college per semester was $5,000. So it was $10,000 per year. So, or no, it was $5,000 for the whole year. Was it $5,000 for the whole year? I don't remember now. I'm thinking how much. I think it was only $5,000 for the whole year. I think that's what my Pell Grant was. And so I would get 2,500 for one semester, and that would cover all my tuition. I'd pay for my classes in advance. I'd pay for my. Isn't that another scam where you pay for your college in advance? Why do you have to pay? Why do you pay for your college in advance before you get your degree? Can anyone tell me that? Why do we pay for college in advance before we actually get the degree and the job? But so I paid the $2,500, and then I think maybe I might have had, I don't know, I could have had $75 left over at the most, but then I needed that for books. And books could run you up to $500 per semester. So, thankfully, I don't recall mine ever going over with the books, and so I would find used books so that I would come out close to even. That's pretty much what happened. And so I wasn't getting a windfall with the Pell Grant. Absolutely no. I was not getting a windfall with the Pell Grant. I had no money. I had nothing to pay my rent as an adult. Now, the full scholarships for the other students that live in colleges, they get to live in there and someone else is paying for that. But I had nothing. I would have had to take out a loan. And that was the student loan that I chose to not take. I chose to not take it because I didn't trust what was going on. And I'm kind of glad now I didn't trust what was going on because, all these decades later, it's like, my gosh, this is a big scam and a fraud. And, we can call it that because what's the product? I agree with these guys. What is the product? What's the product for going to Harvard and spending $100,000 at an Ivy League college? What's so much more so great other than the name of the college, other than it being a brand name, and very few people can get into an elite Ivy League college? Can anyone tell me that? And in many circumstances, I think there's things at Harvard that they do. Oh, the guy, he made the point. What did he call it? He called it something about studying about African lesbians in Africa at Harvard. The study of African lesbians at Harvard is what he called it. Apparently there's a class like that at the Ivy League colleges. Some kind of study for African lesbians at Harvard. Doesn't that seem like a waste? Does Harvard have anything like inflation? Does Harvard have a study? I would like to go to Harvard and be a professor based on inflation. Let me go to Harvard and you're going to hear an earful of stuff. You're going to hear an earful of stuff if I could be a professor at Harvard and I could do what I'm doing from YouTube and I'm making all that great Harvard money. And I'm going to be talking about inflation. And I'm going to be talking about student loans as a scam. I'm going to be talking about scams. I'm going to be talking about money laundering. I'm going to be talking about things that I feel are harmful to our society. And then, if I could get into Harvard somehow or another, maybe I could be a Supreme Court justice and knock some sense into whatever it is that they do, because they seem to not know what they're doing either. The Supreme Court is a bunch of nincompoops.